But he was like, yeah, like he was like, I was on Letterman and then I went home and I turned on the lights and there was like 5 dead cockroaches in my apartment. He's like, so had I made it? Not really, you know? So he's like, as long as you stick with it, you're happy with what you're doing, you're gonna, you know, in theory make it. And I'm like, wait a minute, like a year ago you were drinking wine in Tuscany and now you're like questioning whether or not $1.50 for a cup of coffee is in your budget. You might not want to re-enlist, but like if you quit early, people are gonna have some questions. So you gotta put your time in. 2 years is about fair. Do your 2 years and move on to bigger and better things. But anyways.
Welcome to the In the Field podcast, where we speak to veterans, service members, and those in the transition process to learn about their stories.
Alex, thanks so much for being on the podcast. A little different setup than we typically do, but I'm glad we were able to meet up in San Francisco. First question I ask all my guests: when was the last time you had an MRE?
All right, I'm gonna date myself. So probably before, like, actually maybe before some of your listeners were even born.
Okay.
So I was in the Navy.
Yeah.
I'm a foreign area officer, submariner, so we don't really do MREs.
Okay.
And I'd say
catered lunches?
Yes, at the embassy. No, in all seriousness, I'd say probably the Naval Academy. Circa, like, I'm going to throw this out there, 2003.
Wow. Okay.
Probably, yeah.
So
20 plus years. Yeah.
Wow. Are you excited, nervous, trepidatious?
Oh man, I'm excited. This is Mexican style rice and a bean bowl. So
bean bowl, yeah. Does that
excited.
sound familiar? Do you think they had them back in 2003, or were you still cracking open cans of sea ration?
So the one thing I remember was the heating pads. It was like rock or something was the famous thing that we all had a laugh about.
Weirdly enough, actually, in this studio, there is a literal rock like right out the door, but it's too large for us to bring in here. So we'll have to go the or something route if we want to go here. So let's crack these open. I went beef goulash this time around.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm not going to even try. Sometimes these are a little finicky. We got scissors and we're at like a proper table. If you're going to, let's see if you can redeem it. But
there we go.
There we go. All right.
There we go.
As we open these up, like, where does it all begin for you? Like, did you always know that service was going to be something that you did? Or, I mean, walk me through the journey of, you know, kid Alex and the decisions you were making in high school or even before that.
Yeah, and so the really interesting thing is, for me, like, I think for most of my life, I always wanted to be in the Navy, and the reason why is pretty interesting. Like, I didn't have a big like military family tradition or anything like that. But my father was a foreign service officer, so I spent a lot of my childhood overseas, specifically in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Yeah. And Navy ships would pull in there fairly routinely on deployments. And whenever one did, my dad, through the consulate there, would be able to set up tours. And so I'd always get to go and check out like aircraft carriers, destroyers, things like that. And I thought that was always like the highlight of the month. That my dad would come home and say, "You want to go look at a ship?" I'm like, yes. The Navy is awesome. And then also at the same time, people always say that Top Gun was the movie that made them want to join the Navy. Yeah. It wasn't Top Gun for me, but Hot Shots came out. So it's Charlie Sheen. It was a Top Gun parody. Topper Harley.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. I'm vaguely remembering. I don't know if I've seen the full movie, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a hilarious movie. Still funny to this day. And then they had Hot Shots Part 2 as well. And so in my mind, the Navy was awesome. And I wanted to do it. So I basically spent the bulk of my childhood in Brazil. Yeah. And then I went back to DC. My dad left the Foreign Service, got a kind of like a Beltway, inside the Beltway type job. Yeah. And so back to DC, did high school there. But that's basically in the shadow of the Naval Academy. So growing up, like I was like, hey, can I go to the Naval? Can I take a look at the Naval Academy? Yeah. Went there. Saw it, and from there on out, I was like, that was where I wanted to go to school. So, yeah, I guess it's a fairly long-winded answer to saying just in my mind, it was always I wanted to be in the Navy.
Did you think, like, so you didn't even think about the other branch? Like, no West Point, no Merchant Academy or Merchant Marines. Like, it was just, this is the school I'm going to?
Yeah, well, so I actually did apply to West Point. I got into both West Point and the Naval Academy. No disrespect to West Point, but it was kind of like my backup school. But because I did want to serve. And I was like, well, I'm applying to the Naval Academy, might as well give West Point a go. But when I got into the Naval Academy, that was just kind of it for me. I signed up and turned down West Point and called it a day.
I'm curious, growing up, when did you leave Brazil for DC?
Like early teens.
Early teens.
Yeah.
So I was born in Sweden. My dad wasn't in the U.S. military at all. They just met as a foreign exchange. And so when I moved to the U.S., although relatively young at 5, I do remember being like ESL. And then there's by no means the traditional immigrant story. Yes, my mom was American, but I guess being born in America and having, U.S. parents and just being there kind of on, not deployment, as a duty station, I guess. What was the transition to, I guess, American life? Or did you feel like you were integrated enough into U.S. life in Brazil that felt like a smooth transition?
So, it wasn't a smooth transition. Just being straightforward on it. I had always, because we'd come back to the States like about once a year. I'd see my grandparents. My grandparents were in the Boston area, and aunts and uncles like throughout the Northeast. So, and I was a fan of U.S. sports teams, things like that. But like this was pre-internet times. This was like the 90s. The internet was out there, but it wasn't something we really had. Like you couldn't stream stuff. So I remember I moved to Brazil when I was, I'm going to say like six years old. And so like early memories are all there. And it was, you turn on the TV, it's Brazilian TV. Yeah. It's Brazilian music. Like there was I would be able to get US movies at like the video store. Yeah. But it was really total immersion. And so I don't really know like what was going on in America, like what was cool, who the big bands were, things like that. And then, going back to the States, from that environment of just total immersion, this total other culture, whereas you're like a bubble away from what I was going into, it was a pretty big culture shock. I'd be interested to see what it's like now because you can follow things on Netflix and you can stay in touch with people. You can WhatsApp your friends back home and things like that, but there was none of that.
Out of curiosity, did you have a Portuguese or Brazilian accent when you moved to America, or because again you have U.S. parents, and were you going to a U.S. school or? Yeah, so the short answer is kind of like there were words I think I would say like a little funny, like the UA, because like in Portuguese it's like a tough transition where it's like the word quarterback. Like I remember I used to have a hard time saying like quarter. Okay. But they were just like very specific words. Yeah. I'd be like quarterback, but that was like a one-off thing. Yeah. But I spoke English at home. I went to the American school in Rio, and the school was. It was mainly in English, but there were Portuguese classes. So you would take, you'd have an English class, which is like you read English books, but then you'd also take a Portuguese class where you'd read Brazilian books. Got it. And you did math and English, but then you also took like a history and geography of Brazil class as well. So I did take, which was in Portuguese. So I took a fair amount of Portuguese classes, and my friends were Brazilian. So like on the playground, stuff like that, it was all Portuguese. And especially at that early age, it got hardwired in there. So I can just like switch back to Portuguese just like that. Did you feel like that, this is going to be a bit of a leading question, I guess, like influenced some things later in life, like having that kind of like pivotal time in your life being spent in another country and so immersed within that culture? Like, did you feel like you had a different either outlook on life or perspective as even like a high schooler having lived that? Or are you just kind of focus on like, because again, like high school, they're going to find every single flaw that you have pretty ruthlessly. Like, are you just trying to like dodge any, criticism or whatnot? Yeah. Well, all right. So I'll actually address the high school thing. This is actually kind of funny. So so coming back to America, like I came back to America for high school. That's like so if you're ever looking for the best time to ever make a intercultural transition, you might as well do it at the most awkward time of your life, which is like you're like trying to figure yourself out, and they're like, let's make this harder. Yeah, we're just gonna pull you out of the environment you grew up in and just put you in a whole new one. So I went to this private school outside DC. And it was pretty ruthless. And then, so the funny thing is, like, I remember going to the Naval Academy and they're like, oh yeah, like hazing there is going to be rough. Like people are going to tear you apart. I'm like,
I went there, I'm like, is that it?
We're good.
It's like, is that all you're saying to me? Like, I've heard way worse.
I got a notepad full of stuff. Like, here, you can use it.
Like, you aren't even digging deep on these insecurities, brother. You got to up your game.
Yeah.
So so that was that experience, and then and for me, just overall, this is just like one story that really sticks out of my memory. So my dad and I were walking down the street in Rio. I must have been about like 7 or 8 years old. We're talking in English, and this Brazilian, I want to say like probably like a college student, he just starts saying. He's like, your country has ruined my country with the military dictatorship. Your people stick their nose in everything. He was just like complaining about American foreign policy. He's like, I hate your country, and just like walks off. And I was like, Dad, are you gonna go beat him up or something? And Dad's just like, oh, like be cool. And then I was like, what was that all about? And I was like, I thought America was the greatest country in the world.
Yeah.
Like, we're the good guys. Russia's the bad guys.
Yeah.
You know, we've got Saddam Hussein over there destroying the Middle East. You know, why would anybody be mad at us? He's like, well, like, not everybody thinks we're the best in the world.
Yeah.
And for me, that was just like this like really kind of eye-opening experience. It's like, yes, my perspective as an American is that, and I still hold this perspective, that we are the greatest country in the world. I'm so lucky to have been born here. So much gratitude to be American. But a lot of other people don't see it that way. And the understanding that not everybody sees the world the way that you do, and that doesn't make them a bad person, was something that I was exposed to at an early age and made me a little bit more empathetic to other points of view.
Right.
Not to say I don't agree with everything. I have my own points of view, but I am sympathetic to the fact that other people don't see things the way I do.
Yeah. And this is your time to call out that guy. Do you remember his name? We'll put his Instagram handle here.
God, if I only knew.
Tell me about the Naval Academy. So I guess I'm assuming with your dad and his role, must have been pretty proud. Like, what were your parents' thoughts on that? Was it like he's carrying on the legacy, or, you know, because we've had this conversation before on the podcast of sometimes parents maybe don't want their kid to go the route that they went because they had gone through it, or, you know, how supportive were they?
Oh, this is a really interesting. So fun story about my dad is, so number one, my parents were very supportive of the Naval Academy. I think that a lot of parents are, and I mean, I think that only has a small thing to do with the fact that it was free.
Yeah.
So
it helps.
it's like, yeah, just no college tuition there. But so the reason my dad ended up in Brazil was he was at the University of Florida, majoring in Latin American studies, and he was drafted.
Okay.
And he was like, well, you know, I don't want to go to Vietnam, but I also don't want to like run to Canada, say I have an imaginary medical condition to get out of serving. Like, I want to do my part for my country, but I don't think the best thing for me is to go and get shot in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And so he's like, what can I do? So they're like, given your background here in Latin American studies, you can join the Peace Corps, and we're going to send you to Brazil.
Yep.
And so this is like late 60s, early 70s time frame. So they take him, drop him off in the jungle, state called, I want to say it was either Alagoas or Sergipe. I got to remember where it is.
Yeah, we'll
look at the map.
Here.
Yeah, but it's actually Sergipe. So we can pull that up there. So it's basically... really just middle of the jungle, and they're like, go build a school. And the way he told me the story was actually hilarious, because he was in the Peace Corps, and he was like, back in those days, again, you know, we talk about now how easily connected we are. That was like another world where they just like dropped him off in the jungle, and they're like, we'll be back in 2 years to come pick you up.
Yeah.
And so he got really fluent in Portuguese there, obviously. Just again, you know, the total immersion, helped build a school. He came back to the States and got recruited into the State Department because of his Portuguese linguistic ability. And then that parlayed itself to assignments there in Latin America.
I don't want to go down this digression, but I kind of do. I'm curious as to the importance of Portuguese, given that most of Latin is Spanish speaking, with Brazil and maybe one or two other countries speaking Portuguese, if not only Brazil.
It's only Brazil, but it's the largest, most significant country in South America. At the time, there was a military dictatorship there that was pro-U.S. There were significant elements there that were leftist, and so it was in, again, the biggest, most significant country in the Southern Hemisphere. It was a pretty big deal at the time. Again, in our hemisphere,
And so you touched on this already, I guess, with the introduction of being bullied in high school, the Naval Academy, maybe not quite measuring up, but would love to hear your experience of whether or not, what preconceived notions you maybe had that turned out to be true versus false. For me, I had, I think, a not glorified view of what service meant and what basic training was going to be. But of course, as like a 17 or 18-year-old, like you watch a YouTube video or a show and you're like, I could do that. Like, I'm not like, I'm going to, my drill sergeant yells at me, I'm going to tell him to screw off or whatever. Like, I mean, like what was going through your mind at such an early age? But before you answer that, MRE, let's get to this. What do you have in yours? And
all right, let's do it. So nutritious energy bar. I think it's important that they call it out that it's nutritious.
Yep. The cranberry one, very, very good, actually. I do like that one.
Got some peanut butter. Definitely want to eat
jalapeno
this.
Or regular?
Regular, but I definitely want to eat this before I've got a long thing to say.
Yeah.
So what else we got? Protein drink powder. Okay, excellent. Oh, is this the heating pad?
That's the heating pad. And that's going to be my next...
So we got the rocker something right there.
We've got the rocker something. Do you want to go heated?
Nah, I'm fine.
Are you sure?
I'm good.
All right.
I'm good. So we got some nutritional information here. Got some crackers. This main course right there. And what else you got? Got some pretzels. Yeah. So
awesome.
Not bad.
I love this multigrain. I'm not going to be able to pick it up on camera. But with the multigrain, you get to play the game of, is that mold or is it just the multigrain?
Oh, that's funny.
And you just tell yourself, it's probably just the grains. I'm going to crack this open. Would you like a bite of multigrain with a little strawberry and jam?
I'll tell you what.
You can pass.
Yeah. I'll try this. I'm going to do my own. I'm doing my own crackers.
Looking nice and dry.
Oh, yeah. Oh dear God.
Oh, yeah.
Make a mess all over your studio.
No. It's fine.
Yeah. Oh wow. This is.
We won't get the deposit back.
All right.
I'm gonna do scissors so I can because every time I tear this, it just tears the whole thing. Is that bringing back nostalgia?
Yeah. Summer training 2003.
Yeah. It was a good year. It was a good year. So yeah, let's jump back into it. To 2000. You entered 2003. At the Academy?
Oh, no. 2001.
2001.
So, yeah, I actually joined pre 9/11. So,
okay.
Yeah, I was taking a chemistry test when the planes hit the towers.
Jeez.
Yeah.
What, was there a shift in mentality when that happened? Because, I mean, obviously when you join the military in peacetime, there was probably some reconciliation or understanding that something could happen, but then when something does happen, that's a very different shift.
So what I will say is initially yes, but the real shift happened when we invaded Iraq. So that was my second my second year we did that. And for us, we're okay, this is real. We actually are going to war, because there was a good little over a year there between 9/11 and the invasion of Iraq. We're just what are we going to do something? How are we going to do about it? There weren't, we had invaded Afghanistan.
Sure.
But there was, from what I remember, there was less publicity about it and things like that.
Very limited operation.
Yeah, at the time. Again, at the time. At the time.
We do a lot of disclaimers on the show.
But then when we invaded Iraq, all right, this got real. We are going to be invading countries and toppling regimes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did you ever at that point think back about the man in Brazil yelling at you about the dangers or the maybe the hatred of America, and then still having that US centric mentality, and then the Afghan and Iraq war happening, and then are you going should we be doing this? Or I guess what's going through your mind having had that experience in Brazil?
So yeah, for me, I'm it's not just as simple as they hate us because of our freedom.
Yeah.
So I'm yes, this is not, again, I'm a patriot. I don't want, big disclaimer, I'm not siding with anybody other than my own country. But there are perspectives out there as to why people don't necessarily always see us as the good guys.
Yeah.
And so for me, like that was, a thing that I reflected on. I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, when we do things, like what is the end result? Like, are we going to be alienating populations? Are we going to be really just like pissing more people off, creating more terrorists with that? And so again, like that was just kind of like the thought process I went to, is that it is not as simple as just going in and taking out a dictator. There are knock-on effects, which we've seen since. So the bottom line is, we are overall a force for good in the world.
Yep.
The United States is. With that being said, we just have to recognize that the ramifications of our policies and how they're perceived.
Nuance is always the enemy of entertainment. But I think like in the world of like real life, right, there's always that like, it's almost like improv, like it's yes and. Right, yes, and there's probably additional factors that we need to think about and all that. Did you know what you were going to do while in the Naval Academy? At least most of the cadets that we've had on the show, or people who've gone through the academy, right, you have a general idea of maybe what you want to do, or there's certain branches, but there's no guarantee at the end. So I guess how did you ensure that you were going to get the billet that you wanted, and or were you kind of like, I know I kind of want this, or this, and then let's see what the needs of the Navy are?
Oh, this is gonna be a fun one. So I did like all the wrong things.
Okay.
Yeah. So the bottom line is, when I was there, like I really wanted to be a SEAL, and I went. They've got a SEAL basically like screener.
Yep.
And I went, did it, passed it. With that being said, I was also the member of my class that spent the most time on restriction. Basically, like I got in a lot of trouble. And they've got this this thing you can get. It's called a black N, where if you get 100 demerits, which is the maximum you can possibly get for one conduct offense, you get a sweater with a yellow sweater with a black N on it. And I got 2 of those.
Can you say what you did?
Yeah, I mean, it was like nothing like too crazy, because the bottom line is it can't be something so bad that you get kicked out.
Sure.
But it can't be like a slap on the wrist. And so it's honestly, it's just like tomfoolery. So I basically did stuff, and these aren't even great stories. Like I did stuff that any 20-year-old kid will do. So the first one was my sophomore year. Like I think like my parents were out of town or something like that, and I just threw a party at my house on a weekend, and yeah, I mean, it was
didn't think you were gonna get caught.
Yeah, I didn't think I was gonna get caught. One of the guests brought back a 6-pack of beer, started offering them around. They asked her where she got it from. She dimed me out pretty quickly, and so there we go.
What was her name and Instagram handle?
Okay. Good God, it was actually Dua Lipa. I'm kidding.
You heard it here, folks. Breaking news on the In the Field podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. Anyways, so that was the first one. And then the second one, it was just kind of dumb. Like we had like a mandatory study hour. And it was just like, it was like a company. These are like, when I tell these to normal people, they're like, are you serious?
Yeah, you got in trouble for that.
Yeah, like, so we had like a mandatory study hour, and I was like, this is dumb. So I'm going to go out and drink. Yeah. And then I bumped into one of like the class officers, and he was like, shouldn't you be at study hour? And I was like, F you. And he had the last laugh. And so that almost got me kicked out. But so the bottom line was, I kind of did the right things militarily, but from having my act together standpoint, I was not viewed very highly by very many military communities, many officers there. And so the bottom line was if at the Naval Academy, there is a default service selection where it's called service warfare. It's basically just kind of your standard being a officer on a ship.
Yep.
Right. And you don't, like, anybody can do it. Right. You have to compete to be a pilot. You have to compete to be a Marine, compete to be a SEAL. But anybody can be what's called a SWO, a service warfare officer. So when they assigned me on, like, they give you this envelope, and it was just like, SWO.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. And the thing is, like, I deserved it, right? Like, I didn't have my act together, and I put myself in a position where I didn't get the ideal thing. However, they did give me a caveat where they said, if you want, you can, because I had decent grades and things like that. Not the best grades, but decent grades. And they're like, if you want, you can go and interview to be a nuclear submarine officer. And I love, like, the Tom Clancy, James Bond type stuff. And I'm like, all right, this is Jack Ryan.
No.
Hunt for Red October.
Red October.
Yeah. Like all that like kind of cool secret squirrel stuff. And I'm like, all right, well, I didn't get what I want, but let's just give this a shot. I've never been on a submarine, never seen a submarine. But I'm like, this is a chance to do something vaguely cool. So I went, interviewed for a job as a submarine officer, got that, and the rest is kind of history there.
Why do you think you had a rebellious phase in the Naval Academy? Was it just being a young, 20-year-old?
Yeah.
Or do you think there was something else like to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like some people are just wired just to not like authority. And I've never just been a big authority guy.
Yeah.
Like I just kind of like to do my own thing. And even if the authority is right, I'll just disagree with it just because I don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
And so I saw like a lot of the rules there was kind of dumb. And like when you think about it, when you're in your early 20s,
You're not wrong.
you just want to go out, you want to party, you have a good time. And the Naval Academy, you're basically LARPing, right? And for live action role playing for your listeners who aren't familiar with it, is you're not in you're technically in the military, you're wearing a uniform, but you're going to school, right? You're a college student, and there were officers there. Senior midshipman cadet types that would try to make you feel like, oh, like these are your sailors. You have to act like that. I'm just like, no. Like I'm a junior. This is a sophomore. Yeah. We're dressed up right now like we're in the military, but we're college students. So let's be real here. Actually, being in the military is an entirely different thing. And so for me, I just had a very hard time taking the Naval Academy's being the Naval Academy being in the military very seriously. So that was kind of the issue I had. I'm like, look, I'm a college student. I want to drink. I want to party. I want to have a good time. And then when I actually get in the military, I will take that seriously.
This touches on a topic that I'll admit I'm not fully, I don't have a fully fleshed idea on, but I think it touches a little on the idea of like somebody going to college at 16.
Yeah.
It's like you're a 16 like be a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Like you don't try to be a college kid. And I wonder to some extent of whether or not 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds should be 18 and 19-year-olds, not necessarily 18 to 19-year-olds trying to LARP in the military. And it's weird because what I'm struggling with is I think there's like a lot of benefits to the academies. If my kid wanted to go to academy, I'd probably support them. But you do lose out, I think, on some aspect of being a kid or being a college student. And to your point, like this is where maturity comes in, and this is where if I could go back in time, talk to 18-year-old Alec, I would have a word with him and say, look, like you've got an incredible opportunity here, right, to do great stuff. And I had a lot of doors closed to me just because I got in so much trouble for just, lack of a better phrase, just being a jackass. And had I just been able to tell past me, look, man, this is LARPing, accept it for what it is, play the game, do well, and reap the benefits. So mature me could go have a word with younger me and give him the real deal. At the time, I didn't have the maturity to step outside myself and realize that. I'm going to sound like a broken record player because I've said that a bunch, where it's like once you learn how to play the game, it becomes a lot easier. And I think I had a similar mentality of you when you were in the academy of like, why are we being told this? Why am I doing this? This is stupid, blah, blah, blah. Why are these rules in? And I'm like, oh, like, I guess if you just kind of accept it and, in the back of your mind, you understand that it's maybe stupid or silly or what have you, but then just kind of be okay with it and then make the justifications, then it becomes easier. And it does, to your point, open up doors. Because once I became a good soldier, I had a lot of opportunities, whether that be like going to BFIST or JFO school, or like if I wanted to put in my packet, I could. I got offered green to gold. And that all became because I was like, I play the game, I do this, I show up on time. I say yes sir, no sir, I stand at parade rest. And like, guess what? Like if you kind of do those things, like life doesn't become easy, but it becomes a whole lot easier than trying to like buck the trend all the time.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, just like shine your shoes, get a good haircut, and look motivated, and that's like 90% of the battle.
Exactly.
People will stay off your case, and so that was really it, man. So, but with that being said, I kind of don't regret what transpired. I mean, I guess it's like, I don't know if you say like everything happens for a reason, but I ended up, I never had any desire to go submarines, and it was just kind of like, for me, it was the better of two alternatives I didn't really want, but I ended up having a really, really incredible time on my submarine junior officer tour. I mean, it was really tough, but I'm glad I did it, and I've got a lot of really positive memories of it. We're actually, with Services School, we gave a tour of a submarine to some of our college partners. It just brought back a lot of memories, and I'm like, man, like I actually did this when I was like in my early 20s. So this is so cool. And you kind of, a lot of times you don't see the forest for the trees, but the fact that looking back retroactively that I'd done that was just such a cool experience. And I'm really glad that things ended up working out the way they did.
What submarine were you on?
USS Montpelier. It was called a Los Angeles class. So it's a fast attack submarine. So this is like a little bit of a misunderstanding because it's a fast attack nuclear submarine. All US submarines are nuclear powered. Only some are nuclear armed. So ours was not nuclear armed. It was nuclear powered. And those are the ones that kind of do more of the traditional type deployments where you'll go overseas, pull into foreign ports and stuff like that. Whereas the nuclear armed submarines will just go out to the middle of the ocean into a classified grid and wait for the
what were those locations? I'm kidding.
Yep.
What's a misconception about submarines that people have that proved incorrect once you got on?
Ooh, this isn't. Let me think about this one.
Not every single one has Sean Connery on it.
Yeah. I'm just trying. Okay, no. Here's one that it's just it's like really intense all the time. I'm trying to think of like Hunt for Red October. It was like every minute there's intensity, and it's basically like 99% of the time you're kind of like bored senseless.
Yeah.
Because your missions. I mean, this is not classified, but it's basically doing ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance off a foreign coast. You're hunting foreign submarines, or you're doing a strike type mission. Yep. All of those are fairly. Sorry, I'm looking for. They're not dynamic. They're not dynamic. Yeah. They're not dynamic. You're parking someplace trying not to get caught is basically what you're doing, or you're following someone and trying not to get caught. But it's basically just being quiet, being low key, being stealthy. And again, like 99% of the time you are very, very bored. Yeah. But 1% of the time you're absolutely terrified.
Well, it's funny because the description you just gave on paper sounds really cool. You're like, don't get caught, do this. And you're like, oh man, I'm going to be like a spy. Like I'm doing this and this. And it's like, I assume while you're in the middle of it, you're like, oh my God, like, what are we doing here? It's like when I talk to friends or people who maybe didn't serve or had somebody close who served, where I go like, oh, I got deployed to Afghanistan. They're like, oh my God, like how, like, were you just like getting shot at all the time? Like we're in like trench to trench warfare. I'm like, this isn't World War II. Like we're not just like, it's not a front line that's being hit every single time. Like 99% of the time, you're just bored. You're like cleaning, you're like doing something, you're going on like a routine patrol that like nothing happens, or dropping off school supplies. And then like from time to time, like it's like super, super intense. Yeah. And then back to boredom. Yeah. And I guess the military does a really good job at getting you good at that, like handling the highs and lows and just being really good at playing movies in your head. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'll just it's another thing. So, I mean, I think this is important to talk about as well. So, for me, like I never, like to be very clear, like never saw combat, never got shot at, nothing like that. And any whales or underwater creatures? Oh
yeah. You get those. Yeah. But they don't shoot at you. Yeah. but you hear them calling. We saw some dolphins, stuff like that. But the point, and I think that a lot of people might have this where I would have a lot of what I think, and I talked to my wife, she calls it, and I'm not diagnosed with this, I'm not milking the VA for anything like that, but it's called complex PTSD, where you didn't have like one specific incident that stressed you out or that was traumatic, that was really that messed you up in the head. Like for me, it was just like that constant like 6 months of just constant, like you never know when that like 1% of terror is going to happen.
Yep.
And so yeah, I just remember coming back from deployment, my second deployment, and I was driving off like the Norfolk Naval Base, like we'd been back for a day or two, and I was just like sitting at this traffic light, and I'll never forget it. There was this like Lady Gaga song playing on the radio. This is back in the day when we used to like listen to the radio, so like you'd stay current with like the random songs that were popular. So there's this Lady Gaga song playing, and my heart just started racing. And I was like, I'm home, I'm safe. Like, why am I stressed? I didn't know why this was. And it was just kind of like that de-stress. And it's like my mind had been calibrated to just get that awareness up and just be vigilant and stressed just in case something bad was going to happen, even though nothing bad was on the horizon, just from that experience of being on a submarine.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for sharing that. I guess anything that helped you kind of overcome that over time? Was it just time, or did you find things that kind of particularly helped you afterwards?
So yeah, I mean, this is a good talk about some mental health stuff. So I never addressed it, and my father unfortunately passed away suddenly while I was at business school, and that really kind of messed with me because I was just coming home to go visit him, and then we just got word that he had just basically he had died suddenly, and that put me on edge. That like a bad thing can happen at any time. It's kind of a flashback to that 99% of boredom, 1% of like you never know when something awful is going to happen. So I went while I was at Wharton, they had free CBT through their clinic, and so I went. I got CBT. About it, and I shared that I'm always kind of on edge now. I shared about like what happened when I was on the submarine, and again, my concern is like I'm on edge because I never know when something bad's going to happen, even though things are completely calm. I'm just always vigilant, and so what they said is just like rationalize everything. Like what percent has like this is one bad thing that's happened, but like how many times did the phone rang and it wasn't your dad? Like just like be conscious that it's almost like the airplane crash thing. Like you feel afraid when you're on an airplane, but the reality is it's like, a fraction of a percent of a chance that anything bad's going to happen there. And so it was essentially rationalizing fears, and that helped me with it. Interesting.
I've find that there's something there, and I've never kind of contextualized it in the way that you did, but it is really, really interesting of the like, because I've noticed that too, where I'm like, there's always like a baseline level of stress. Like I've talked to therapists of like, do I have OCD? Is it just like a mix of things? Like I habitually check like locks and doors. I like, even if I lock, I have to check like 3 times, and I'll take a few steps and I have to go back and check it another 3 times. And I'm like, was it just born this way, or was it something in the military where you're like constantly trying, like, do I have my weapon? Am I like, do I have enough radios? Like, is my battery dead? Like, do I have to check this? And I try to be like, well, like, okay, it's going to be fine, I have noticed, weirdly enough, as I've gotten older, that it's gotten both better and worse. Because I think when I was younger, my like early 20s, and I got out in 22, or when I was 22, that I think I still had the like young 20-year-old mentality of like, if I die, I die, or like, there's no, because I was a 22-year-old, yes, I had a family and a, loving support network, but like didn't have kids, no wife, no nothing. And I feel like now where I'm in my 30s, I'm like getting married and like think about having kids and like a house and all that. I feel like some of that is coming back, where some of those fears or stress, I'm like, wait, now I feel like I actually do have something to lose. And like, it's almost like a regression back as I think more and more about like now I really do want to live for like this and this and this and this and this, where in my early 20s I had that like naivete of like nothing's gonna hurt me, blah blah blah.
Yeah, well, it was weird because on the submarine, what really stressed me out was like, to your point, like I didn't really think about dying that much, which is interesting. But the thing that stressed me out is like, if I make a mistake here, like it's like the submarine, it's a crew. It's like one of us won't die. Yeah. If one of us dies, we all die. Yeah. And I don't want to be the guy that made that mistake that cost the crew their life, or that like cost some kids their at the time their father, because it was all male crew. And so for me, like that was the stress I had, because like when you're up on the periscope, you're the only one who can really see what's going on outside. And so if I made a mistake and got us hit, or if I was officer at the deck and I didn't pay attention to a contact that was coming into us that ran us over and we sunk,
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't care if I die. I care if my negligence and mistake caused the crew to die.
I forget who I was talking to, or maybe this was on a completely different show and I'm misremembering, but I think that's a common theme within the military, where it often is less about self-preservation and the idea that you could like let somebody down around you, which is great. And now when I'm in the civilian world and in business, I do bring a lot of that mentality of like servant leadership. How do I make sure like it's not about my health, but the health of like my employees and the people around me, and how do I make sure they're always kind of protected? Which there's good and bad, and like there's probably a whole discussion there, but probably adds to a lot of stress. And I mean, how old were you when you were on the submarine?
So like, yeah, like mid 20s. So I was like, you know, like 23 to 26. I was on there for 3 years. So yeah, about that.
Which is still wild.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think back when I was 23, 24, and it's like barely respond. I mean, and I was a forward observer with like field artillery, and I'm like, how was I allowed to do that? Like,
yeah, like I've thought about that. And so, but this is the funny thing. So in the private sector, like when I was at McKinsey, I remember they'd be like, well, are they ready to brief the CEO, or is like so-and-so ready to like brief this PowerPoint? And I'm like, bro, and I was like, they were just like, hey, yeah, you're qualified submarines, get up there and do it. And you're just like this 23-year-old kid that's in charge of like a $2 billion vessel. And they're just like, don't F it up, man.
Yeah. You got this.
You'll be fine. You'll figure it out.
Here's a challenge point.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that always just cracked me up. It just like, you know, how, because I always say like, you know, the military is risk averse. It really isn't. Like, we just give like people with fairly basic training so much responsibility.
Yeah.
And in the private sector, there is so much oversight, or at least I saw.
No, I mean, risk appetite, maybe necessity, maybe like, I don't know what it is. I mean, obviously there's a reason why there's like basic training in OCS and all that to probably at least distill some. And like, to be fair, I think those schools do a good job. But the idea of, I went through JFO school and I was 19. So 19-year-old Holden calling in a 500-pound bomb with like a laser guided, where I could, if I got the laser safety cone wrong, like the bomb coming to me.
Yeah.
Like, what? like
yeah, you went to the school, you passed, you're fine.
And then like,
you'll be fine.
And there's people in the class that like failed some of the, you know, it's like you get 2 goes. I'm like, yeah, but you don't get 2 goes in real life either. Like,
yeah, that's like most military, because the thing that always cracks me up about military schools is like the really hard schools, like, you know, like your Buds, Rangers, like they always like, you know, dramatize them, show them on like the Discovery Channel and all that about like how hard military schools are. But man, most military schools are pumps, not filters.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, we'll get you through it, get overseas, and you'll figure it out when you get there.
Yeah, you'll be okay.
You'll be fine.
Patriotic sugar cookie.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I'll give a few of these.
So how do you go from being on a submarine to where you are now?
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, yeah, and very, very, everything's in the MRE is very dry.
Yeah, so just add some peanut butter.
Well,
might as well.
Not bad, though.
Yeah. All right, so I'll be quick about it. So I've taken a fairly nonlinear path. So I did the submarine and then got off the submarine. I spent 3 years doing what we call shore assignments. So they call them in the Army, the billets. Sure. But kind of like the way the Navy works it is if you're an officer, your first 5 years, which coincides with your obligation from the Naval Academy or ROTC, is generally spent at sea. And then you finish that obligation and they hold out this, you know, kind of this carrot for you, like, well, if you stay in, you can get a job on shore, like not deploying or anything like that.
That's so smart of them.
Yeah, and so you're like at the time, and then I didn't have my act together, man. Like, so I'd been I've been deployed, I've been in the shipyard. It was just like go. Like, I hadn't taken the GMAT, hadn't researched colleges or grad schools, anything like that. So I took. I love being overseas, so I had the opportunity to go to Bahrain for 18 months, and then follow on with about 18 months in Naples, Italy.
That's got to be nice.
It was very nice. I can't complain. But so I did that assignment, got out, and my thought was, I don't want a desk job. I don't want to work for the man. I want to go do something cool. So I was like, you know, my thought was I want to get into media and entertainment. So without without a real plan, I moved to New York because I'd saved some money when I was in the military, like my deployment stash. It's really funny. Like what we think of as a lot of money in the military is not a lot of money in the real world.
Come to find out, also New York, quite expensive. Sneaky back.
Yeah, so I was just like, I was like a squirrel, like storing up my nuts for the winter. I'm like, all right, we're gonna go there. I'm gonna make it on TV. And so got that money, showed up there. I was able to get a role on the Daily Show backstage.
Oh, wow.
Very cool. Did that for a number of months, but it did not. It was unpaid, and I was hoping that would turn itself into a paid opportunity. It was through a veteran integration program that Jon Stewart spearheaded. Awesome guy. I can get it all into that story, but I know we're kind of short on time here. But
no, we got time. Yeah.
Yeah. Bottom line is, so did that. Burned through almost all my savings. I'm like, all right, I got to get a day job.
Yeah.
So went to a career conference, and I was a nuclear trained guy with the TSSCI clearance. So I was able to get a gig doing basically like nuclear plant inspections and management.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I did that for about a year in Amarillo, Texas.
Okay.
And this is now flash forward. This is about 2014 timeframe. So ISIS was kicking off, and I wanted to go do something because we see these things. I'd been in the Middle East. I was like, I want to get back at it. This is again a clear case of evil versus good. I don't want to sit here in Amarillo checking plant maintenance logs. I want to get after it. So I joined the what they call affiliated with the Navy Reserve, and it was a pretty seamless process. And then I jumped on a JSOC mobilization where I could deploy over there. Did that. That gig parlayed itself to an offer to do some State Department contracting work in the Middle East. So I did that for about a little over a year. And then I ended up making the decision that I wanted to go to business school because, I'd kind of done the military thing. And I'm like, I've done it from the private sector side. I've done it from the actual being in the military side. I'm like, all right, let's do something different. So through service to school, got a fantastic ambassador, went to the Wharton School, did that for 2 years, got to McKinsey, did that for a couple years, and then I got the opportunity to come back and be the CEO of service to school. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I want to talk about service to school, one, because it has personally affected me, but I guess in those parts of the journey, how are you, what's going through your mind in the sense of why did you think you wanted to do media entertainment? Was there anything that influenced there? And then you're like, okay, I want to do MBA, then to consulting, all those things. Are you kind of just figuring it out as you go along, or what metrics are you using in your mind to make those decisions?
I'll tell you for media and entertainment, I'll give you all the metrics, right? So some of them are altruistic, some of them are financial. We all got motivations, right? What they call the famous thing, MICE is money, money, ideology, compromise, or ego about what motivates people. So I would say here, let's do the MICE framework here. Going full consultant here.
Yeah.
So media and entertainment.
How much am I going to owe you if we use this?
Yeah, no, by all means. So you just donate to service to school. We need money. Quick plug for that. We need some cash. So I'm once again asking you for your financial support. So with that, I'll say that was ideology, was media entertainment. So we would my job generally when I was overseas was I was sitting in a jock, and this is not sexy work, at a computer, and we'd have our display the world, right, with everything that's going on, and we'd have a news feed from AFN. It would be either Fox News or CNN or what have you. And when I was watching the news, and so you've got a juxtaposition, right? This is what's really happening, and what people are saying about it. And I'm sitting there, I'm having firsthand experience dealing with things. And specifically, I was in Bahrain for the Arab Spring, and I would get frustrated because people on the news would come in with these totally biased points of view that were not founded on firsthand knowledge of anything, right? And I was like, I've been there. I haven't seen everything, but I've seen enough to understand the world situation. So I wanted to go over there and basically speak truth. I was like, I want to get on TV and with my perspective, and I like to think some degree of humility and willingness to hear different points of view, give accurate perspectives at what's going on in the world and the U.S.'s place in it. So that was what motivated me to go media.
I have a question for that. On the media entertainment side, this goes back to an earlier comment I made of sometimes nuance is the enemy of entertainment. And you go to the Jon Stewart show, who, let's be honest, like is actually seen and supported as like somebody who brings relatively like unbiased or does some good deep dives. And you look at now John Oliver's show, who does like really big deep dives as well. But I guess having the perspective that you just mentioned, but then also being on, potentially Comedy Central, like, were you reconciling that, or you saw that as actually kind of the best outlet for this information?
So I really do think that comedy is the highest form of art, because at the end of the day, we look at the world and like things are just kind of ridiculous, huh?
Yeah.
Like, people just vying for power, vying for control, vying for attention, like all this kind of stuff. And if you just kind of take a step back and laugh at things, sometimes that's the best way to keep your sanity. And so I really love what they were doing on The Daily Show. And with Jon Stewart, so specifically, he brought in a group of vets, and this is to his credit. Like, this is 100% Jon Stewart's initiative, and I was there because of him. And he was like, look, like, I want to make fun of the current administration. I want to make fun of political figures. I don't want to make fun or offend the people that are actually executing their policy.
Yeah.
So I will show you content and you'll give us your feedback on it. And in the meantime, we'll give you like some mentorship. You can go run errands for us and all that. But I really want to hear from you, hear your perspectives, and really hear your take on the world behind the scenes, which I value tremendously. So I cannot speak more highly of him as a human being. And then for the comedy aspect of it, it was just like, you can be mad or you can laugh. Yeah. And I choose to laugh sometimes. And so that's the best way to deal with it.
Yeah. Before we get into your next decision, we got to crack open the MRE.
All right.
The actual real MRE.
All right. So let's do this. All right. So I'll squeeze it down right there.
And you actually got lucky. You got the Tabasco sauce if you want to use it. I
feel like that. Tabasco sounds like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and they saran wrap it in such a way that is not easy to work with.
Yeah. So but, I think I'm just gonna
just go straight for the if you need some nice amazing
matches.
All right, I've now got a stockpile of matches.
Oh wow. Cool. All right. So I'll crack this open.
Yeah.
All right. And so I'll give you a quick spoiler. So my decision to go to Amarillo, Texas and work in a nuclear facility was money driven.
Yeah.
Right. So I depleted all my savings and I was like, all right, I need a real job because at the time. And so here's where kind of media and entertainment comes in. So it really is a young person's game.
Yeah.
Because like, I'll never forget something that Jon Stewart said. He was like, you will make it. He was like, one day, if you work hard enough, stick with it long enough, like you will make it. And he was like, he's like, I don't know if I've made it now, but he shared this story about, I can't remember the show he ended up on. He was on, I'm just going to throw this, he was like on Letterman or something like that. Yeah. But he was like, I was on Letterman and then I went home and I turned on the lights and there was like 5 dead cockroaches in my apartment. He's like, so had I made it? Not really, So he's like, as long as you stick with it, you're happy with what you're doing, you're gonna, in theory, make it. So the struggle that I personally had was being able to have the endurance to ride that out, to ride out the tough times. So at the time I was getting, like, I had a fiance, I was getting married, and I'd been used to the good life a little bit, Yeah. I'd lived overseas. I'd had that
Naples, Italy. You're saying, yeah,
those sweet 03 paychecks. And then there was this one morning where I had to wake up where I was like, things have got to change. So I remember I took the 7 train in from Queens. I was living in Queens. So I took the 7 train in to Manhattan, and it was on the west. The studios were on the west side. So I'd get off and walk over, and I was just like tired, just not feeling it. I was like, do I want to get a cup of coffee? And it was like, at the time, it was like $1.50 for one of the, those New York cups of coffee where they got like the Greek guys on them? Yeah, like one of those like cheap New York cups of coffee. I'm like, I'll tough it through. And I'm like, wait a minute, like a year ago you were drinking wine in Tuscany and now you're like questioning whether or not $1.50 for a cup of coffee is in your budget.
Yeah.
And so to that point, I was like, all right, you gotta change, things gotta change. But for people who are in their early 20s, you make it work.
Yeah.
You get a roommate, you figure things out and just hustle and grind until you get there. And so in many ways, like that's where I was a little bit spoiled. And that's kind of why, I didn't really have the the motivation to stick with it or stick through it as much as I did.
Not that I'll formally push back, but some people say like, right, like any startup can be successful as long as you have like enough money and time, you can, kind of figure it out. But the reality is like sometimes you get to a point where you're like, I'm either not able to raise enough funds to keep going, go donate to Service to School.
Yep.
Or my life situation is a point where like I literally cannot like do this, right? Like when I went to Stanford, I was not married, no kids, loving mom and dad, and, could tough it out on some things and, live kind of paycheck to paycheck or from student loan to student loan. But if I was like in my 30s and I maybe had kids and a wife, like it would just be a completely different set of metrics. So I don't feel like it's like whatever. It's like, yeah, like the reality is I need to get money at some point.
Well, that's the point. It's like the reality, right? And so the thing is, in theory, yeah, like I could have probably gotten a job like waiting tables on the side to make cash. If like this had been something that I wanted from the bottom of my soul, but at the end of the day, I'd been spoiled. I had like a wife and I'm like, I'm 30 years old. I was a lieutenant in the Navy. I drove a submarine, and now I'm sitting here. And so like you kind of got that ego and that expectation of like what you were worth. And you'd been, lack of a better phrase, just been spoiled. And so in theory, I could have probably written it out.
Yeah.
Like, I could have waited tables on the side. I could have driven Uber on the side. I could have like hustled and made it.
Yeah.
But there was that voice in the back of my head that was like, bro, you're 30 years old.
Yeah.
You drove a submarine, now you're driving an Uber.
Yeah.
Like, come on, get your act together. And so that was kind of like what killed that ambition. And I think at the end of the day, for like a startup, like you do run out of money. Yeah. But like as a person, you can always make money, right? You can always survive. If you have kids, I think that might be a little bit of a different story because you gotta put food in multiple mouths. Yeah. But if you're an individual, or even if you're just married and your spouse can work or something like that, I think you can make it work. It's just how much are you willing to sacrifice to make that happen? And are you willing to wait 20 years for your break?
Yeah. What then brought you to, and then did you get a bite?
I did. It's quite tasty.
Out of 10, what are your thoughts?
This, well, I don't really have like a great frame of reference because it's been 20 odd years. So this is the best MRE I've had in the past 20 years. That's my response.
Put it up on the board. We're going to say 8. 7.5, 7.2.
Yep, let's do that.
All right. Beef goulash. Good. It's got like rice or some sort of grains in it. I literally thought I actually had yours for a second until I realized there are bits of beef in here. But
that's actually not bad.
7.8, I think, on the beef goulash. I'd take this. If this was seeded, this would be really, really good. Yeah. And I like that it came with the orange powder, and then you got. See, I don't like the chocolate. The chocolate. Too heavy for me. I prefer the lemon lime or like the orange. Give me something more savory.
This is very. This is very like robust, like a chocolate protein shake.
I know. It's very. It seemed very filling.
Yeah.
You're in where, Texas?
Amarillo. Yeah. Amarillo. And so I went to it's called the Service Academy Career Conference. Floated my resume around, and the bottom line, they were hiring for this one contract they got to basically modernize a nuclear power plant. Or it wasn't a nuclear power plant, rather it was a nuclear manufacturing plant.
Sure.
But so went there for a bit. It was just very procedural. It was procedural stuff. Cost of living in Amarillo is pretty low, so it was nice. Got the savings back up to where they needed to be. But if we're like looking at it's funny because it was a complete opposite of what I was doing in New York. Because in New York, I was doing something very fulfilling that paid no money.
Yeah.
There, I was paying something that was fairly lucrative, so I was comfortable financially, but very, very bored and lacked fulfillment. And so it was just kind of you had to find that happy medium. But and so then at that point, I started like with the great thing about being in the reserves is that there's always opportunities that crop up for stuff you can do. And so if you ever want to basically pull the chute and get out of the rat race, you can jump on an assignment overseas or even in the U.S. if you want. But basically, you can put your military skills to use on an assignment, and so that's what I did.
Got it. And then at the same, so you're doing that, and then deciding to go to MBA or sorry.
No, this is way this is like so no MBA. I didn't really have. because you know, for me, I just wasn't that motivated to do an MBA. Like it was just like I'm just like 2 years. Like I never liked school that much.
Yeah.
Like what am I going to do? You know, just sit around in a classroom instead of where I was like I want to be out doing stuff, getting real world experience. You know, I don't want to just be kind of faffing around in a classroom.
Yeah. LARPing as a business major.
LARPing as a business person. And so I had the opportunity. And so this is like a cool thing for the reserves is like, so they're support personnel for all like JSOC tier 1 units, and they draw from there like a lot of openings there are for reservists. They're competitive. Like you have to put in an application. They look at your evals. There's a fairly extensive background check you go through. You have to take this test called the Wonderlic test. Okay. So they give it to NFL quarterbacks at the combine, or actually all NFL players at the combine. It basically assesses like how good you are at making decisions in a time constrained environment.
Got it.
And so you basically, and there's like they give the Myers-Briggs test. So there's just like, I mean, I don't think anything I said there is classified. It's just pretty standard. They're like, all right, you know, where the tier 1 guys got to go and show how well they can do land nav and rock through the woods and run and do all that stuff. Shoot. For us, it's just like, you know, basically how sharp are you at doing like day-to-day tasks, and are you the type of, do you have the personality that would fit in this in this community? And so so I went and did all that. I was selected, which is for you know, a role as a mission planner with one of their units. Went overseas for like what was it, like about 8-9 months. Did that, and that was actually during it was a pretty busy time. It's 2014 to 2015 timeframe. So where like ISIS was kicking off, there was a lot of stuff going on in Yemen and throughout the region. So it was pretty busy time.
At what point are you starting to think of the MBA, or are you feel like, did you feel like you kind of hit that sweet spot of money, pay, you know, enjoying and feeling fulfilled at work?
So I really enjoyed that. That was so I'll say like that was in I'm gonna go with that was ideology, because I was motivated to serve my country overseas, and because like this we're seeing like there was beheading videos, and I'm like, look, like I'm not gonna be the guy that's gonna stop the guy from beheading someone or like bring him to justice, but I'll be in the back like helping out some way. But anyways, point of the story is that from that I got married like right after that. So like I wrapped up.
If this is too personal, we can cut it. Same person you were with in New York?
Yes.
Okay, so through and through.
Yep, through and through. So she's been through it all. So love you, Charlotte.
Shout out Instagram handle here. Actually, don't.
At Charlotte Emmert. So anyways, point of the story is that, so at that point, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go back home, you know, be a normal, you know, husband for a bit.
Yeah.
Right. So I got off the mobilization, flew back home. Out processing immediately. Like my wife's from Ireland, so immediately then turned around and flew to Ireland to go get married.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you do the wrapping up the like Celtic style wedding where they wrap around your hands?
Yeah. We did all that. So it's interesting. I had to go through like marriage, like because I'm not Catholic, so I had to go to marriage class. So the funny thing about the Catholic Church here, we'll talk religion. We'll talk politics as well. So my background is my mom's Greek Orthodox. And then I had to go through marriage counseling in the Catholic Church and get approval to be married in the Catholic Church. And I realized how hierarchical and almost like military it is, because we went there and my wife's like, you know, this is, you know, my fiance, he's American, he's not Catholic. And then the priest is like, all right, so like, what religion are you?
The worst of them all.
No, and I'm like Greek Orthodox. He's like, oh, thank God.
Okay.
He's like, all right, this is easy. He's like, and basically there's like essentially like a chit that you have to write for approval. And if you're Greek Orthodox to get married in a Catholic church, it's only like one level above it. It's like the priest has to write it to, I don't know, like the bishop or something like that. It's like one step up. But he's like, bro, if you're Protestant, this thing would take like 2 years.
Really?
Yeah. So it was interesting. So it was very interesting. So he was like, all right, you're normal. And then the thought is that they view the Eastern Orthodox Church as having split away from the father faith, the mother faith, whatever you want to call it. And they hope we will come back. And see, his thought was, we're going to get Charlotte to convert me. And so I'm still yet to convert back. So they got some work.
genetically 25% Jewish or Ashkenazi.
Yeah.
And then being from Sweden, although like 60% of them are agnostic or whatever, they're, I think, Protestant. And then it was kind of an incredible experience when I went to Jerusalem. They, you learn a little bit of the history, and it's like, well, the Protestants think that, he rose in that hill, and then the Orthodox think it was like this hill. I'm going to get all this wrong and probably just make everybody mad. But, I mean, it's like those like slight differences, and then it fractures off into its own complete, like, it's the same of the three Abrahamic religions, but then just like slight nuances between it. And then with Judaism, I remember going to the wall, and they're like, are you Jewish? I'm like, well, 25% Ashkenazi on my mom's side. My grandmother converted to Judaism to marry my Ashkenazi grandfather. And they're like, well, your grandmother is Jewish, so your mom's Jewish, so you're Jewish now. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, man. That's all right.
No, you're good. This is the greatest part of the show, is that people get to eat and then try to talk at the same time.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're going back is telling that it is decent.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. And so story goes, then so we head back to DC. I'm back working for Booz Allen, but I was able to swing a gig on like this. It was just like basically like a Naval Sea Systems government contract. And so we were in DC fairly briefly, and I get a cryptic email saying, like, given your work experience, we think you would be good for this particular role. If you're interested, can you call so-and-so? And I'm like, all right, I'll give them a call. Like, let's see what this is all about. And then basically there was an opportunity to go work in the Middle East on a project. Like, I signed an NDA. I don't know like how much of, like, I don't know how much of this I'm allowed to talk about or not, just try to be safe. But basically there's an opportunity to go do some stuff. And then this is where it's like important that I say I was not working for a Middle Eastern government.
Yes.
I was on a US State Department contract working overseas. So as a civilian, I was overseas working in the Middle East for a couple of years. And so I'll say like that one, I'm actually thinking that through. I was probably a little bit of money, a little bit of I don't know if ego, the adventure. I'm just like, this is kind of cool.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
I think it was Will Swenson, episode 1 actually, who said something along the lines of like, there's a time and a place, or like, when else would you be able to do something like this?
Yeah, I was just like, like why? I was like, why not, right? Yeah. And so the bottom line is, so we went over there, and I moved there with my wife. My wife and I actually met in the Middle East.
Oh wow!
13 years later, we're still together. But anyways, so that's a pretty big digression. But anyway, so the point of that is, so she knew the Middle East, and she was like, yeah, let's do this, try it out. And so she came over there, and she just had a really tough time with the place we were living. She had to wear an abaya, everywhere, like the full thing with a headscarf and everything, and it was. She just couldn't really make it work. And I was getting pretty burned out myself. The work was pretty intense. Yeah. And so we're like, all right, we need a change. And my roommate from the Naval Academy had gone to Wharton. And he was like, dude, you should think about going to business school. And he's like, and I was like, at the time I was in my like 32, 33. I was like, I think I'm too old. He's like, nah, you'll be fine. He's like, just break 700 on the GMAT and you'll be fine. We'll sort you out. And so I did that. I saved for the GMAT, got the score I needed to get in, and then decided to swing for the fences. So I only applied to like the top few business schools, and I got a service school mentor, and he was a game changer for me. So shout out to TJ Root.
Instagram handle here.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for so our editor, and you can maybe keep this in. I say that mostly as a joke, and then sometimes I do, like, service school. There's some key people. Yeah. But then it'll be like these like random individuals that nobody's ever gonna find. I'm like, Instagram handle here. And my mom's like, I can't find this person. I'm like, oh yeah, you don't actually have to put that person. Yeah. Like.
They're looking for the Brazilian that shouted at me in 1990.
Like, where is this guy? Sorry, continue. That's a digression.
Yeah, man. And so, but yeah, no. So that was he was a game changer for me, and he gave me just like such tough love. So he was an Army vet. He was a 160th pilot. He's a Night Stalker, so super sharp dude. and he just tore me apart. And it was what I needed, right?
Yeah.
He was, it was like, have you ever seen the movie Billy Madison?
Yeah.
Remember?
Billy Madison 2 is coming out, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it Adam Sandler's grandkid or something?
No, it's like it's him. There's like I think I saw like a Reddit post. Where it's like
man, I gotta check that out because that was one of my favorites. But I just remember that scene from it where he gives a speech about the little dog that lost its way, and then the guy is like, "That is the dumbest thing we have ever heard. We're all now stupid for having listened to you. I award you 0 points. May God have mercy on your soul." And so I'd send my MBA essays off to TJ, and TJ would just like reply with basically that. He's like, "This is the worst essay I've ever read. How do you think anyone is going to understand this? I award you 0 points. This is awful. Give it another shot." So he beat me up pretty bad. I figured out how to write MBA essays because of him. I was successful in getting into Wharton, a school which I had no business getting into, because of the support I got from service to school. And with that, I was able to transition and go to business school.
How did you learn about service to school?
So I was actually randomly, the brief period I was in DC, I found out about them because I think it was like I was on Georgetown's campus, and they had an event there where General Petraeus was speaking. I was like, oh, I'm going to go check this. Was it General Petraeus? Yeah, I think it was General Petraeus. And I was like, I'm going to go check this out. And it was a service to school event. And that's how I found out about it. And then I volunteered. And so I was already a volunteer. I was volunteering, helping undergrads. And so I knew about them, and then I'm like, all right, I'm going to hit pause on helping undergrads. I'm going to get help myself. I'm going to get a MBA ambassador.
So this must have been 2013-ish, 14 maybe?
When I got the when I saw General Petraeus, I was circa I think that was 2015. Yeah, okay. 2015. Yeah, 2015. And then I applied for grad school in 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I owe that to that success to service school, to TJ, and you just hear so many stories. Like, my story is far from unique. We got 3,500 program alumni who've come through, and are I like to think that they're like the success in the grad school and undergrad process is in no small part to the mentorship they got from their peers. I mean, I am where I am today because of service to school. How do you go from utilizing service to school to now becoming the CEO? All right, so I still stayed on being an ambassador throughout. So I was an MBA ambassador from the time I got into Wharton till the time I became CEO, and I actually still do MBA mentorship. Wow. And I wrote a book, Breaking Business School. Breaking Business School. You throw the Amazon up there. Savvy Veterans 10-Step Guide to MBA Success. And with that, it's free on Kindle, so I'm not trying to sell you anything. If you throw me $10, you can get a paperback copy. Buy a coffee link. Yeah. But anyways, so I'd been pretty involved with service to school as a volunteer. And I went to work at McKinsey after business school, and as a consultant, you usually have to put in 2 years to get any credit for it. And so I view it like 2 years in consulting is kind of like your enlistment. Yeah. Like you might not want to re-enlist, but like if you quit early, people are going to have some questions. So you gotta put your time in. 2 years is about fair. Do your 2 years and move on to bigger and better things. But anyways, I digress. So I'd done the 2 years in consulting, and Tim reached out to me, the then CEO of Service to School. I was thinking about stepping down. She had been in the role for a fairly long period of time. She was raising a family, and she's like, I've kind of looking to move on. And he asked me if I had any interest in doing it. And for me, it was just something I didn't even have to think about. I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. Ego or money? Or ideology. Ideology. So I've got very firm, and so we'll take it back to my childhood. So I went to a fancy private school in Washington, D.C. I don't want to badmouth it. It's a great institution, great teachers. With that being said, the people I went to school with, I felt were fairly average. Like, they were smart. They're smart kids, but I felt like they were kind of spoon-fed. Like, we'd have so many of my classmates would have tutors, that have SAT tutors, math tutors, take tests untimed, and then they would get into these elite colleges. And then I kind of followed their trajectory, and I'm like, they're out there becoming like big bankers, part of America's 1%. But they kind of had their success fed to them. They didn't have to. They started at the basically at like first and goal. And to me, like, what I saw in the military, and like, I look at if you take it back from high school to Naval Academy to being on the submarine to Wharton, to McKinsey, if you're like, take your A team, like who are like, you're in like some kind of like Jack Bauer situation. Jack Bauer, 24 guys, did I get that reference right? Anyways.
I think so, maybe. We'll say yeah.
You flash this picture up. Flash Kiefer Southern, it'll end up there. You got to save the world in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Who's your A team? Like pick 5. And they would 100% be the enlisted crew, like 5 enlisted crew members on my submarine.
Yeah.
Right? When it came down to being able to solve a complex problem under time constraint, under significant pressure, those are the people you wanted to go to.
Yeah.
And that was because they had raw intelligence and capability and a degree of humility, which I didn't really see to the same extent anywhere else. And I'm like, why aren't these people running this country?
Yeah.
And I'm like, services school is actually democratizing education so that people like that have access to schools like Stanford, Harvard, Yale, and can really get out there and become part of America's 1%.
Going back to almost at the very beginning, or I forget when we were talking about this, but like, right, given enough time, money, and energy, you can probably do anything, right? There's definitely, to your point of like raw intelligence, but also if you can throw enough money in the problem, you can get enough tutors and time that you will be successful. And I noticed, I credit Services Tool to getting me into Stanford. One of the challenges of once I was in Stanford is kind of to that thing is I'm also competing with now college students who grew up with all the tutors and all the time to be able to do that. And so I felt like I was playing catch up. I'm so glad I went to that school and it has positively impacted me. But like your experience in high school, I realized like, oh, like I have the raw intelligence to be here and be successful. But I also realized I needed to be more mindful of some of my limitations in the sense of given enough time, energy, and mentality or whatever, I could be great at math. I went from like failing college level algebra to linear algebra or, calculus, right? Differential equations. But the amount of energy I had to like put in to try to like catch up with everyone, I was like, okay, I'm probably not gonna be a math major.
Yeah.
Like I knew my limitations were there because I didn't have the other things. And so like, how do I balance my raw intelligence with things that all, while still challenging myself, I could pick up a little bit quicker since I don't have all the time in the world, or I don't have all the energy in the world, or the money to make up some of those deficiencies. So
I mean, the short answer is like, look at where you were trained. Yeah. Like, and so like kind of defaulting your training, like what was I trained to do? Like, so while those kids, when they were 18 years old, they were like, I mean, like, they were like learning Excel or they're doing calculus, like what have you, like, all right, what is my unique advantage? They might've been coached on that, but what was I trained to do that they were not? And how can I exploit that to my advantage? And so it might've been something your military training. And so in my case, I mean, this is, when I really saw this when I was at McKinsey, and I could talk military, right? And so I might not have, like where a lot of my peers could talk private equity, could talk finance. There we did do defense and aerospace and defense consulting and DoD consulting, not one and the same, very different things. But I had that baseline vocabulary and understanding about how the process worked. Although, and that was something that my peers who had done the kind of more traditional route did not have, and that placed me at an advantage when I was doing work in those fields. So it's really just kind of finding out what ecosystem am I going to thrive in based on my experience and putting yourself in that ecosystem.
What was the biggest challenge running a nonprofit?
So for us, it's really, I mean, I'm going to go back to fundraising. So the bottom line,
donate here.
Yeah, donate here. So
this is not a bit like I literally actually donate here.
Because the bottom line is we have got so many talented veterans, and we talk about coaching. It's like there are so many coachable veterans who can be going to all the top schools in the country, and we always like kind of hang our hat on those top schools, but also just even state, like, and don't want to speak ill of any state school or anything like that, but some people don't want to go to an elite school. They want to go to the state school where they're from. You want to be in a place, they want to go to a school that's got a good football team, right? And so basically, we want to help as many veterans as we can, but we're capacity constrained. The way to solve that is by hiring more people and more counselors to mentor those veterans. But right now, it's really just kind of balancing this kind of difficult problem that we have where we have multiple variables in our equation where we rely on volunteer ambassadors to mentor students, and oftentimes there'll be a dip in either or. We're like, okay, great, we've got more ambassadors than we need. We need to like push hard and really do like a lot of applicant recruiting, and then we'll like have a surge in applicant recruiting. Now like applicants outmatch ambassadors, and then it's like vice versa, just going back and forth, and all that problem can all be solved if we could just hire like a full-time staff of advisors, which is kind of the next thing that we're looking to do. But it's just really kind of managing that complex problem. And then when it comes to donations, the challenge that we have is it's a altruistic ask. There's like, if you invest in a startup, if you're a startup founder and you're looking for money, you can say, hey, I'm going to give you X% of my company, and I think that we are going to make you rich. And like, that is your pitch, right? There is no payoff beyond like a tax credit in donating to us. We have to make a case that your donation is going to make a tremendous impact and change people's lives, and that you want to do that. And there are so many charities out there. Why should people care about veteran education, and really like making that case to people?
There's a few things I want to hit on, and I want to be mindful of time. I guess quickly, because sometimes when I talk about service to school, they think of like, oh, well, like, what if I don't want to go to Stanford or Harvard? And like, that's fine. Like, I really do think service to school and Warrior Scholar Project as well. Like, it's like, what's going to make you happy? Like, what resources and tools do you need to be successful? And like, if that is a state school, do the state school. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to go to Stanford or Harvard or Yale or whatever, go do that. Just like, don't. I think what I learned from service to school is like, just don't settle.
Yeah.
Like, just don't think that you need to go somewhere because that's the only place that will accept you.
Yeah. And it's like, what school, like, where do you vibe? Yeah. You know, and it's like, because I remember I was talking to a Marine who was onboarding with us, and I was giving him the whole spiel. It's like, yeah, you know, we can get into Harvard, Yale. And he's like, nah, you know, like, honestly, like, I'm going to stop you there, make it real easy. He's like, I want to go to New Mexico State. Like, I'm from New Mexico. My family's there. I love New Mexico. Can you help me get into New Mexico State? And we're like, heck yeah, brother. Like, we'll help you out there. And you know, and some people want to go to like a big school, like that's where you vibe. And you know, there's one of the veterans I was talking to. So he was a submariner, and he went to Notre Dame, but he like started as a freshman, like went and lived in a dorm and had like the full like Notre Dame experience. And that's just like what he wanted. Some vets want to go to like a small liberal arts college and have that like kind of like new, like quintessential like New England college experience. It's just like, look, like, what's right for you, and we're not going to judge you anyway. Like, we just want to get an honest assessment of the place where you're going to succeed and be, you know, have the best college experience, and help you get there. What's next? For me?
For you, for service to school?
Oh yeah. Okay. So for service to school, we have, you know, realistically speaking, to take us to the next, like I wanted to take us to the next level. And to me, the next level is, I'm not going to give you the exact number, but there's a fundraising target I want us to hit, so that we can develop that, you know, full-time advisory program. And at that point, I think that we will be at at the next level where we have essentially unlimited capacity to take on more applicants. And that is really where I want to take us to. I feel that can be done, you know, in relatively short amount of time. You know, we're talking, you know, years, not decades. We shall see. Maybe we can get I don't know how wealthy your donor, how many wealthy donors are listening right now, but you could be the person that takes service to school to the next level. But yeah. Because that's like the big thing, because that will mean we're no longer capacity constrained, and any veteran who wants to use our services will be able to get it without, you know, any stress about not being able to match them with a volunteer ambassador. So that's kind of like what is next for service to school. We've also piloted a career program. So one of the things that you're talking about, so this is starting like right now, we got a grant from Google to do this. And so one of the things you're talking about, like your experience at school, where you felt a little behind your peers, that is universal. And the challenge we're having is we're like high-fiving at all these vets getting to these great colleges, but we're getting feedback from some that were saying, hey, you know, I got to Princeton and I was just so far behind my peers. I didn't know what consulting was. I didn't know what banking was. And when it came to getting internships, I felt like I was underemployed. And so we're like, all right, so we're starting a career mentorship program where people can understand what the big, you know, kind of big lucrative careers are, what the, you know, what and how to recruit for them, like what the life cycle looks like, when you should start applying for internships, and all that, and then linking them up with veterans at those companies who can help get them in the pipeline. So that's kind of like, another thing we're working on now. So that's really like what Service to School is doing, besides what we've always done, which is getting veterans into good colleges.
To that end, oftentimes service members don't like being thanked for their service. I know I find it fairly awkward. Service to School, I think, is an opportunity for organizations, schools, etc., to make that actionable, in the sense of veterans, service members don't want handouts, but we want opportunities. And not only just that we want opportunities, it's that we're like freaking really good students, employees, members of society. And oftentimes, and a lot of the times, we just don't know what we don't know. So it's like, I missed out on all the investment banking internships because I just literally had no idea that they started like a full year before the summer.
That's crazy. Yeah, I've been seeing that. It's like you got to recruit like 18 months before you're invested for your internship.
Yeah. And so I missed out on that because I just literally didn't know. And I think that is what, in my opinion, Service to School is doing, is like bringing that to the forefront and ensuring that both people, organizations, and schools aren't just thanking people that for their service. Like, I really don't like the term serving those who serve, because I'm like, well, but like that's not enough, right? Like, but like, what does that actually mean, and can that be actionable?
Yeah. And so, all right, so there's a few things there. So number one, yes, 100%. Like we just want opportunities, and it's the way I look at service is, I always joke about this. It's like I don't come from a lot of money. I'm not I didn't come from a very rich family. I was definitely advantaged growing up. I won't deny that. But I do have a very rich uncle, Uncle Sam. And to get that, so I was able, like, I would not have been able to pay for Wharton had I not had the GI Bill. But what I got was an opportunity there through the GI Bill, through my service. And that's really like what we want, is that opportunity to really make the most of our lives, because we put ourselves at risk and did a very hard job that very few people are willing to do for our country.
Yeah.
And that's kind of and when it comes down to it, schools do love veterans. And it's not just because, hey, like you served your country, you put yourself at risk, but we're just like generally tend to be like good, humble, down to earth people, because we didn't come from, most of us didn't come from privilege. And if we did, we had that beaten out of us pretty quickly. So that humility that we bring to campus is something that they find refreshing. And then also, one of the things I did to help, like we took our partners to the submarine base and just help them understand like what we had, what it all took to be on a submarine from a training perspective, from a day-to-day life perspective. So they understood the quality of the candidates they were getting on their campuses. So yeah, so I will say that, yeah, you always feel awkward getting thanked for your service, because we all know somebody, I'm pretty sure every veteran knows somebody who was killed in the line of duty. We all know somebody who was wounded horrifically in the line of duty. And unfortunately, most of us know somebody who was dealing with some things that caused them to take their own life when they came home. And so for me, I feel very privileged. Like I shared, like I've never been through combat. While I was in service, I never saw anybody killed. And so I feel like my time in the military, was not nearly as hard as many others. And so for me, I do feel very awkward when people thank me for my service, because I always feel like the Navy gave me more than I ever gave the Navy. And so to that end, I want to be able to give back to veterans through things like Service to School. And so with that, by getting the opportunities that I had through Wharton and through McKinsey, I've now been able to do that. And so that is why I'm grateful to those institutions. And again, don't thank us for our service. I like your thing. Just give us that opportunity to put it to good use.
Yeah. And then what's next for you?
Very interesting. So I'm really happy where I'm at.
Yeah.
So the short answer is I've found a life that I really, really love in terms of flexibility, in terms of like what I like to do and finding purpose. So I'm a foreign area officer in the Navy Reserve, and my job at Service to School enables me to kind of really do both. So I love foreign policy. I grew up in overseas. That was my father's really like his trade. It's what we always talked about growing up. And so I can pursue that passion while also having another job that gives me a lot of purpose. So I've got both, let me think about this, ideology And I'd say 2 ideologies. There we go, 2 ideologies, because I believe in America being the greatest country in the world. As a foreign area officer, my job is to make sure we have strong global partnerships and that our near-peer adversaries, because nobody is a peer to the United States, don't get any ground on us. So I get a lot of purpose from that. And then also with services school. So I'm really happy where I'm at. And then long-term, it's a really tough question as to where I see myself going. So I'm kind of in a weird position where I'm in my early 40s. My wife and I don't want to have kids. We're both pretty happy with what we're doing. We're like, all right, like what are we doing?
Yeah. That's the cool thing about being dinks, though. You can just like, what are we doing next week?
And so really, like, I'd say probably like the nearest thing I'm working on is writing. So I wrote my book, Breaking Business School. I've got an idea for another one, not Breaking Business School, but tentatively calling it. And actually, I'm really interested in getting some listener feedback on this one.
Drop a comment down below.
Yeah, but calling it How to Make It in America.
That's a good one. I like
and
that.
It's basically like your ticket to making it or your ticket to realizing the American dream, and like what it takes to get hired by big companies, to get into good schools, because I've kind of got an insider's perspective on that, and something to that effect, because I wrote a how-to guide on getting to business school, like what's the next step. That's my how-to guide was a very narrow guide. It was, are you a veteran? Do you want to go to an MBA program?
Yeah.
I think we've got 1,000 people have like sold 1,000 copies or so. But I'm like, all right, let's just make it something that everybody wants to read, a how-to guide to credentialing and using schools and particular companies to succeed in America. And so that's kind of like the next idea I had. And then my wife and I had an idea for a sitcom, which I'm not going to bore you with.
Keep that under
We're going to keep that idea. And so
maybe a little release on YouTube, maybe a little pilot episode.
Yeah, so we're writing a little treatment on that on the side. And so, there's like little things like that I've got. And so at a high level, very happy where I'm at. And the next thing I'm kind of doing is scratching the creative itch, doing like a little writing on the side.
I could double the length of this chat. So many places that I want to, or so many threads I want to pull on, but unfortunately we got to get back to the conference that's going on actually right now. Alex, thanks so much.
Thanks, man.
For being on the show.
Thanks for the MRE, man. I think I got to finish this up.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Enjoy your time, and just, I don't know, an incredible journey. And again, I feel like a broken record player, but and I swear I'm not saying this because you're in front of me, I would not be where I am today without Services School. Just an amazing organization.
Well, I'm going to throw it right back at you. Services School would not be where we're at without the veterans who come through our program, because if the veterans went to these great schools and effed up.
Yeah, that's true. I tried.
And we like schools wouldn't want us.
Yeah.
Like we would not exist if the veterans we sent to these schools did a bad job.
Yeah.
But the reality is we started out with like few, if any, veterans in these programs. Veterans started coming in. They took like a handful, like in the first year. You all crushed it, and they paved the way for more. Like you're one of our early guys. So you really, really paved the way for future vets, because you showed up to schools, you did great, people loved you, and they just wanted more, which has made our job at Service School so easy. So I should be thanking you, Holden.
You're welcome. I'm kidding. Thank you. It's the least I could do. I wish I could do more for the organization, like donating at this link. We'll end it there. Alex,
thanks, man. Take care.